Right, welcome back to part two of episode 60, which is our brewery edition, where we've been chatting a little bit about breweries. Um, we've covered so far the Meridian's Brewery in Barmouth. We've talked about the Stonehouse Brewery in Oxford Street. We've mentioned Marston's and Carlsberg. We've mentioned Asahi High and Meantime and Dark Star. So we're doing pretty well. We're ticking them off. So last weekend, my Saturday was at the Stone Food and Drink Festival, which has been going, I think, for something like 14 years now. And again, I guess a bit like the Malton version in its heyday, it was an absolute cracker. It was, in the good old days of whatever it would have been, 2000 or so, stacks of food, lots of people giving food away, trying stuff, massive crowds, lots and lots of different beers, a bit of a festival atmosphere. Yeah, and I know trends have changed. In fact, last year they didn't postpone last year. They moved it in. They had to move. They're normally based fairly central to Stone. There's a Marks and Spencer food court and a leisure centre, and they normally do it on the field there. But unfortunately, they were expanding last year, so they moved out off Stone to a kind of a scouts. There's like a permanent scout camp a little bit in the wilds, and it didn't really work. So the numbers were a little bit lower. We got there Saturday about 11 o'clock ish, jumping on the bus for £2 from Stoke-on-Trent. And it was very quiet. We walked straight in, to be honest with you, whereas in the past you'd be queued for sometimes 10, 15, 20 minutes. And I've got to say the beer offering this year was very, very meagre. Just the two local breweries, really, Limestone and Jowls. There was quite a few cider stands, and the ciders were quite nice. I know Sun was on those, but very limited. Only one marquee of food, and again, it was the normal. Somebody selling olives, somebody selling pastries, somebody selling
Cheese.
sausage rolls. Yeah, cheese. All that cheese is wrapped in wax. So yeah, it was a bit of a sameness, really, which is a little bit of a shame. However, what we
What
had
we find
seen.
now is when we go around these fun drink festivals in the north now, the same stands at all the
Yeah, they
festivals.
just do they
Just
just do
the pie company, it's all getting
just do the
a bit
routine, don't
much
they?
more muchness.
Yeah. I mean, I think the only one thing about this is that they do still have the two local breweries. And in fact, Limestone were very much talked a lot about that and said, this is our back door. We will come here every year. If we're in business, we'll be here. This is our town festival. And obviously, Jowls is a Staffordshire or Stone brewery, but it's not actually there anymore. They've moved to Market Drayton, which is about another 15, 14 miles kind of down the road a little bit, just in Shropshire. So anyway, what I'd picked up is that both of these breweries were going to do brewers talks. I think there's a slight little advertising plus there. Brad, who runs Limestone Brewery, who many years ago I used to play rugby with, is little bit of a local legend. And he was just going to talk a little bit about the brewery, the story behind it, which was great. Jowls's was billed as being a tutored tasting. Now, gent, if I said to you, what's a tutored tasting? What do you think you're going to go to at a food festival and it says tutored tasting?
I'll try various beers. They'll
Yeah,
give you tasting notes. You'll
yes,
compare them.
yeah. So what it actually meant was you could chew on a hop, and you had two kinds of malt that you could put in your mouth and chew and spit out. And there wasn't a beer in sight, nor was there a bloody beer token or whatever. Which contrasts because the last time I came to Stone Food Festival and Jell's were there. And then it was the market. It was early. I wouldn't say early days. It was back when it was just kind of starting to make big things. And the managing director gave a really great speech, actually a great talk about the whole battle with Bass and the history of gels. And then had a little bit of kind of a competition that wasn't. And they were liberally giving out beer tokens. I think I managed to get 13 pints of Jell's that day. But I say, not a squiddle this. However, due to Limestone did have beers, and they were giving us beer, and this is their brand new beer called Stone Edge. And really interesting, what they've done here is they've actually taken an apprentice because Brad was saying, he's getting on, he's in his nearly 60s now. Unfortunately, his wife, who used to be really the driving part of the brewery, really, unfortunately, she got cancer about 18 months ago and died, unfortunately. And it was really a really sad time. And it's his daughter now, which is with him, Sarah, that's working with him now. Sarah actually came up with a Stray Cat Lager brand, and a little bit to come back to that in a minute. So Brad was thinking, it's important that we keep this going. Brad actually started brewing at Titanic when Titanic first kicked off. He was playing rugby against Dave Bott, who was the Titanic owner, and the story is at half time they both walked off, and he said to Brad, do you fancy coming, do you fancy coming working as a brewer? And Brad said, yeah. He said, when can I start? And he said, Monday, and that was it. He went to work for Titanic, and as they got bigger, he moved to Stone and said, I want to take brewing back to Stone. And that's what he did. So Stone Edge is their newest beer, and I say they took an apprentice on, and this is his first beer. So he's doing a brewing course at Nottingham Trent University. He's working in the brewery. So the task was he's had to come up with his new beer. He's had to design it, get the recipe right, do all the bottling, and all Stone beers have Stone in them. And his name is Edge, so it's Stone Edge the beer, and it was a very nice kind of light brown beer. So it was very, very tasty. So thoroughly good talk. Lots of really interesting things about the brewery. What he did was he took over what was Brent's old brewery. So it's still a bit like the Sam Smith one we'll come on to in a minute. And it's in there again, if you're on YouTube, it's in their logo. It's still the old Brent's brewery, still a tower brewery. And in the main it's there. And then what Brad was saying was the best thing about it is it drains really well. So he said, they built this brewery here for a reason. It's on the edge of town. It's got two boreholes, although he did admit that currently they don't use them. They use Severn Trent, and then they have to Burtonize the water. But that's their next kind of step, is to try and utilize the boreholes. And we'll come to boreholes, won't we, Bruce, and Sam Smith, and talk a little
Oh,
bit
absolutely.
about that. Um,
Astonishing.
but it's got good drainage, and it's got water. And where if they don't use a tower really anymore, it's very important that he thinks they keep this heritage. He was really dead honest actually about things. He said, you're not making money as a brewer these days. Keeping your head above water is what it's all about. He talked a bit about people like Black Sheep, gone into administration, and a couple of other breweries that have done that as well. He said that every brewery I know is simply paying off their loans. And he said, and that's
Mm.
literally where we are. He said, he said, the moment we've got a van we've had for 10 years, it's falling apart, and we can't yet afford to buy a new van. That's kind of where we are as a brewery. And we were chatting to Sarah actually afterwards about the Black Cat, and she says the Black Cat at the moment is we'd have to sorry Stray Cat Lager. We can't can that. We have to can it. And she says it's 5 grand just even to start getting the stuff that the canning machine sorted for you to book it in. She says that it's just not worth it. At the moment, it's just not worth overheads. You're not going to get your money back on it. So we've gone back to us doing our cask and our bottled beers. So I think they say they're ticking over. He was on he's only said we're just about scraping a living. We're not paying off our loans at the moment, and that's kind of next thing that we've got to start doing. So a really interesting talk. They've got quite a nice setup. They've got a little bar in the brewery, but they've also got a little bar across the road I've mentioned in previous episodes, which again is worth a little visit into it. Unfortunately, they had to shut their pub down in Newcastle, where I'm based, and that was again
Yeah,
because
no.
his wife was she kind of ran the pubs, and unfortunately they've closed that down. They do a good range of beers. They had a good range on there. I tried the Cherry Stone beers, really quite nice. Einstein, I think Nick, you've had some Einstein. It's kind of that cross lager bitter kind of style beer. That's their biggest seller. He says I think they do 8 core beers, and then one every month they do a seasonal special as well. And he said that kind of ticks us over. That kind of gets us where we are. So really, really interesting. And then the other brewery which there was were Jowls. So we talked a little bit about Jowls in our last episode. Again, and Jowls of the Red Cross. I did check. It was I think the 4th ever trademark. Bass is number 1, and this was I think it was actually number 4. I think we said it was second. It's not quite right. They kind of spin that a little bit. Um,
I said number 1 and number 2. They had the red triangle, the blue triangle.
yeah. This probably felt a lot more corporate. So first of all, we had the lady there who was the head of marketing, and we had James, who said he was the brewer, but he actually wasn't a brewer. He's head of production distribution. He's Australian, is James. So he was all right. He was quite knowledgeable. but it was all very clipped. James, should we talk about our Green Monkey Lager? James, should we talk about our water? And it was kind of almost
Yeah.
scripted, which you know, fine. But a lot you could tell a lot of people there were kind of had gone there purposely to listen about the brewery and you know, we talked about we talked about you'd seen Jowls is in I think Whitelocks not long ago, and actually had a picture on my phone, and I said, you know, they said about, oh, we used to be quite a famous brewery, and I said, yeah, you've got windows all over the world. You know, in America they've got Whitelock windows still in some of the heritage in pubs. I said in Leeds, and they didn't have no clue that like Whitelocks in Leeds has got a dual sign. I thought you're head of marketing, you don't know. It's like,
All of
oh,
that in it.
oh, I better follow that up when I get back to the office. Like, anyway. So anyway, it was fairly interesting. I'm going to go back in a minute. The only good thing that they did was that they did give you if you bought a pint in the festival, you got a free pint back at their Crown Wharf, their new big pub in town, which that was all right. And again,
Yeah, yes.
if you
All
bought
right. They buy one, get one free.
yeah, if you bought a
The
glass,
Weatherspoons.
you got 20p off every other pint as well. So, which is
But
all
is it? It's not a polyglass though, is it? It's not polycarbonate. It's one of them wibbly wobbly ones.
Yeah, it was a bit thicker than that. That's what they were trying to say to you. It was a slightly thicker than that. So we did go to the Crown Wharf and the pictures there, and it is a stunning pub, I've got to say. And I did go for the most expensive beer I could on my free pint, which was all very good. What did they tell us? They told us a little bit about they talk a little about actually Green Monkey's quite nice, and to be honest, I'll be honest, I've gone off a little bit of their beer, and there's a reason probably coming up here. So I often have a pint of Green Monkey, and it is a very good proper craft lager, and they certainly bigged it up. I mean, they did make the point that they do lager it for 3 weeks, which again is I guess the bare minimum to make it like a proper German lager. They do use the Reinheitsgebot, which is that German purity rule, so it's only water, yeast, and malted barley. They do use their own borehole, and they claim it's the same water, the same aquifer that the old brewery in Stone was on as well. So the actual water is exactly the same. And again, the water is very sulfur heavy, and it's very much like Burton water, so they don't Burtonize their waters. And I think that's probably what puts me off their beer a little bit, because it's got that slightly
Yeah.
sulfurous kind of eggy stink to it. They also try to claim that the monks were brewing pale ale in the 16th century, which I did kind of think I don't think they were. I know they do reckon hops came in a little bit earlier than they would previously thought, but I don't think monks were brewing pale ale. I think they were brewing strong English ale, which sometimes had hops in, sometimes didn't. And as I mentioned, they didn't appear there, and they didn't really talk a lot about Jowls's was one of the early camera kind of challenges when Bass closed Jowls's down, and closed the brewery down. And it actually came up. I think came up in an article by Pete Brown in the Sunday Times. Where you talked a little bit about it as well. But anyway, there we go. So Jowls's brewery was all very good. Limestone. Just a little bit about Limestone. 2008, and I say there's the brewery there. That was the Bent's Brewery, formerly the Montgomery. And as always, look what happened. They got bought out by Bass in 1967, and they shut them down within 7 years. They shut them down completely. But the bottom picture there is kind of what it's like now, so you can still see it's still got the elements of that old Tower Brewery, which was built back in 1889. And again, they're quite proud, Limestone, because they did bring brewing back to Stone after a gap of 34 years, a bit like Brew York and York Brewery did, didn't they, in York, and been there as well. Okay, so I think I've covered most of that. Oh yeah, just something there. Look at that, the rising costs. So again, I said they were really honest. For example, they said the last 12 months, the price of caustic, which we use to clean all our equipment down after we've brewed, used to be £500 a month. It's now £2,000 a month just to buy caustic soda.
Wow.
And he said the electric bill went up from £1,000 a month to £3,000 a month, which again is why we stocked our lager production. So that's we've talked a little bit about, haven't we, the cost of living, but again, that just puts it in perspective. And he said that's why we're not making any money. We're just about keeping even, and everything.
Those figures are frightening, aren't they?
I mean, costing. I mean, I guess that's all things, isn't it? It's cost materials, it's transport costs, isn't it? It's the bloody stuff being stopped in canals and war zones and pirates in whatever the Far East. So yeah, very, very interesting. Right, so we need to get on because we do need to start. We wetted lips last time we met, I think, about the Sam Smith Brewery. So as I mentioned, as part of my membership of the Historic Brewing Society, they do a number of beer trips a year, and this one had been on the calendar for a while. That's a trip to Samuel Smith's old brewery in Tadcaster. So I managed to get 2 tickets. So Bruce came with me. Nick unfortunately couldn't get off work. And off we went, all free of charge, which again is amazing in these
It was, yeah.
isn't it really?
Astonishing.
And as you mentioned, the other interesting fact was that they we asked the head brewer about photography, and he said, "Yeah, not a problem. And do you mind if we use our phones? We've all brought cameras." "Oh no, just use what you want." So yeah, very strange. So the day
What
started
was
off.
even more extraordinary was at the end of that, at the end of the White Horse, where they go by the brewery, there is a deli that sell all Sam Smith's products, all his bottles, all his merchandise. Now we had 40 people here who would have all gone and bought a case of bottled beer, bought some merchandise because we're grateful to be there. And it didn't take anybody in there, which I found absolutely insane. There was a chance to,
I
those
do
people would
wonder
have,
that was our guy who again had turned the 2 hour tour into a 4.5 hour tour, hadn't he? Because actually the other group had gone. The other group had gone down earlier than us, who were
Yeah.
with the head brewer, and I wonder whether they did go. But of course, the first picture is again Tadcaster High Street. Forget the roadworks, but there is the brewery tap. There's the brewery headquarters.
Yeah.
The White Horse and Griffin, is it, or the White Horse and Angel? And it's
Right,
still.
Angel White Horse. Yeah.
It did look like there was some life, but it's still not open.
It's shocking.
And again, for us going around the brewery to be able to go have a beer in there would have been great, wouldn't it? But
Yeah,
it's
and it's a
still,
fantastic pub, It's
yeah,
his showcase pub, and the irony, he's got 3 other pubs now open in Tadcaster. He's got 3 of these pubs open now in Tadcaster. But you think he'd move a manager in there, but he does it. His logic is extraordinary.
yeah.
Extraordinary.
So anyway, as we were walking up the brewery, you walk up the high street and then you turn a sharp left, and as is the old the story, on the left of this little lane is Samuel Smith's, and on the right of this lane is John Smith's. It all began on the left hand side, so the old brewery is the old brewery, and that's where the Smith dynasty began. And then I think when Old Man Smith died, the brothers, as always, got into a bit of a fight, and there's a bit of an argument. And John said, "I know, I'm going to build a brand new brewery on the right hand side." So he went to start to build John Smith's brewery, and offered Sam the chance to have the old brewery, which he kind of accepted. But what John apparently did was he took everything out of the brewery. So Sam Smith thought he was going to inherit a brewery with everything inside it, and he didn't, because John Smith took everything out of the brewery and put it in the one next door. And there is other stories about them firing musket balls, firing across that street. Anyway, there we go. So it's quite surreal having those 2 breweries betwixt one another. Obviously, John Smith today is a Heineken brewery, and they're huge cooling towers around the back. Those interesting breweries, wasn't there? They looked like Christmas trees.
Was it?
You thought they were Christmas trees at first, but they were. It was just foliage,
Fully
about 3 foot high,
extraordinary.
growing out the top of their children,
Extraordinary.
which was very, very strange. So anyway, here's part of our party work walking up, and as you can see, there was steam coming out of it. Although again, I think this steam brush is probably from the coal-fired boilers, isn't it? No, it wasn't really brewing these days. So
It was
we had a
extraordinary.
fantastic time, and I say we've got loads of pictures, so we will share them over the next episode. And we mentioned a few highlights last time. I think the highlight was the Yorkshire Squares, and again, if you're on YouTube, there's a very nice picture there of nut brown ale gushing through those settlers.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll perhaps just read out the tweet thing here. A group of BHS members were opportunity to visit Sam Smith's Old Brewery, an in-depth behind-the-scenes tour hosted by head brewer Gavin Scoresby and Mick Burton, Mick, who was the kind of the assistant brewer, had been
Great
there
bloke, wasn't he?
all his career, hadn't he? We talked about the dray horses. They're still being used 5 days a week. Still have their own cooperage. I think one of only, I think he said 2 breweries now in the country that have their own cooperage. And obviously they'll like Coopers as well. And the 60+ Yorkshire Squares made out of Welsh slate, and a fine beer to sample after as well. We had to go and buy our beer in the Red Lion, but that's another story. And again, the brewery is a little bit of 2 halves, because they do very much big up the You know, we're the oldest brewery in Yorkshire, malarkey. And once you get behind that red brick facade, you come across this 21st century mega brewery,
Yeah,
which is, again, if you're on YouTube, the one on the right. Okay, it's in York Breeze Block or York, but they York Stone, isn't it? But you don't, and
yeah.
it's you don't, you wouldn't know this is here, would you, from the high street? And
No,
even
you
from
would not. You won't see it at
wouldn't
all.
know that this is here. But this is where the bulk of their beers are actually made now.
A
And
lager
this
plant.
and there's nothing traditional here. This is all push button, one
Yeah.
brewing vessel. And at the moment they're doing organic lager, and then they'll do taddy lager, and then they'll do, whatever it is. So very much inside, it was all very automated, lots of bleeps and computers and things. However, they do still brew their ale in the old brewery. And that, again, a bit like the Brent's Brew, which is seen as a tower brewery, and it literally is still a tower brewery. So interesting. The other thing they let slip, wasn't it? That, again, I wasn't aware of this. I think, Bruce, you kind of thought, yeah, I've heard about this. Is that, again, this is not Sam Smith's only brewery, in that they actually have another brewery across in
Yes.
Stamford, in Lincolnshire. And this is what's called the All Saints Brewery. And again, it's interesting, this one, because it's one of those where, is it a bit of nostalgia? Because apparently this was the Melbourne Brothers Brewery, and I can just about remember Melbourne beers when I was over in Loughborough. Although I think they stopped brewing in the 70s, I think, but I think there were still windows and things. And they brewing ceased here at the brewery in 1974, and their 32 tied houses were supplied by Sam Smith's. So they did a deal. Sam Smith's carried on giving their pubs beer, and they then sold the brewery on to Cameron's. And as far as I understand, Cameron's then were going to dismantle the brewery, but Sam Smith then came back in again and said, "No, actually, we'll take the brewery over." And by all accounts, Sam Smith now run it. Both of the head and the assistant brewer had been down there, and in fact, the Sister Society, they'd actually been for a brewery trip, I think, last year down to there as well. And they said that this is where they tend to brew all their fruit beers, are all done in Stamford, which is interesting because I also picked up, again, you're on YouTube, an old Melbourne Brothers advertising for fruit beers. So obviously a little bit of thing in Lincolnshire, lots of market gardens, I guess, with lots of soft fruit. So yeah, interestingly, Sam's have another brewery, which is.
I did hear last week, I was talking about the somebody pub, and I'm not had it confirmed, but they said they think it's recently closed stock production there. The
Yeah,
fruit beers and all.
but they were talking. They were still talking about it working, weren't they? They were still
Exactly,
talking
yeah.
down there. So interesting. I mean, whether it just does batches, because I mean, all their fruit beers are in bottle. There's no draft. You don't get draft fruit beer, do you?
Exactly, yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
I mean,
presume
people rate them really highly, but they got very expensive. It's about £7 now for a bottle of their fruit beer.
Yeah. So I say, as I mentioned, I think last time, our tour did go on slightly, and it was billed as being 2 hours. I think we did leave the brewery till about something like 1:45. And then we were actually marched up to probably what is, well, I would say not quite the only pub open in Tadcaster, because there are a couple more, but probably Tadcaster's best pub at the moment, which is the Royal Oak, which is, I guess, their kind of unofficial tap, isn't it, by the sounds of it?
Yeah.
And this is a lovely little pub. Two big room on the right, small snug room on the left, where we all kind of managed to get
Great
in.
pub in winter with a huge roaring fire. Definitely a winter pub. Yeah.
So this is kind of just tucked off the high street, really, heading towards York end of Tadcaster. But I don't think I'd ever been in here before. And a nice pub, really. So yeah, and we managed a couple of pints in there, and then missed the buzz and had to get an Uber back to York. But that's another story. So I hope that's wet your whistle. We will do some more. I'll put another sequence of our kind of inside the brewery together, and just thought that, not want to bore people, but it's interesting, and I think, as I mentioned last time, it is the nearest thing to Willy Wonka. I think you would come across. So we've done.
Yeah, be nowhere else like it, will there?
Justice and my breweries there. So you two are planning a trip tomorrow. So come on, tell the fair listeners what's potentially, depending on the way that the railways are working.
Well, unfortunately, I've been having a peep. Unfortunately, today they had vast cancellations and the bus replacement from 4 o'clock. It looks as though that trip's going to feed. There's massive cancellations forecast, Nick.
Well, no, they said there were staff shortages. So they're running buses from Windermere back to Oxenholme, weren't they?
It's around Oxenholme. It's all the disruptions that are going to be likely.
Yeah, but they
occur,
reckon the
so that-
disruption is through staff shortages, not because there's a problem with the trains or with the tracks or anything like that. And I assume that's because, as I say, half the staff were at pub till 1 o'clock last night and didn't get out of bed this morning. But I mean, yeah, if you want to play it safe, Bruce, then probably the safest place to play is my even going to Manchester. Isn't the bloody roadworks or not roadworks, rail works or something going on? Staley Bridgeway or something. So yeah, I don't know.
I think
really.
after this, what to think of this. So we'll go somewhere tomorrow. Northern, another thing's to £10, but you're spending an awful lot of time stood on railway platforms.
Or on buses. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So well, that means we'll have to listen back. So it's going to be a beery mystery tour. So
Yeah, it could well be. Yeah.
I know Nick's on the Ilkley beer tonight. Can you get to Ilkley on Northern Rail? I think you can't you? Via Leeds.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can.
But then there's nothing, not much else to go. You can do Ilkley and Menston, but then if you remember, Bruce, we had to catch a bus to Otley, didn't we?
Yeah. And what
Last
you
time we
can
went
do
that way.
is you can go as far as Ebden Bridge, and then instead of coming, all you do is just pop on the £2 bus over the moor, and you end up in Haworth, Keighley, Skipton. I would go to Blackpool or do Lytham, the grapes in Lytham, drop into Blackpool, and on the way back you've got Ebden Bridge, maybe stop at Todmorden or Burnley. Is there anything in Burnley?
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying. You're saying that there's problems with network up on West Coast, but if
Well, they
it's
keep
staff
that,
shortages,
that's the main artery. They're all offshore. That main artery of Blackpool, they keep that open though. You rarely get, because that's taking the bulk of the people. Then you get them somewhere near so they can get home, don't they?
yeah. But Windermere is the main artery because it goes directly to Manchester Airport for all our Chinese and Japanese friends.
Do we
And
go by
that's-
do we go through Oxenholme tomorrow?
Yeah, but that's why they were saying they're all having to run buses between Windermere and Oxenholme.
Yeah.
For that last little leg, because there's trains just run that leg, and there's trains run all the way down through to Manchester Airport, which is the one that we're getting because that's the Preston one. So I think they prioritise that one because obviously you've got all our Oriental friends coming into.
I mean, to be fair, once we get to Preston, we can assess the situation, can't we?
Yeah, well, that's it, Bruce. Isn't it? Yeah. And worst case scenario, we'll have to come down West Coast Main Line. Manchester is the other option, isn't it? Really,
we could because once we get to Preston, you can go across to Wigan, St Helens, Liverpool, Northern.
Yeah. We'll get ourselves to Preston and see how it's going, then, Bruce.
Yeah.
So next time we meet, we'll catch up on your baby trip. I said we'll finish off Sam Smith's visit, and then I guess we've got to start thinking then about what we're doing kind of after summer, and are we getting more trips sorted out, and possibly you two share a birthday, so whether we can do something for the end of August.
We'll do our Scottish 2-day, our 2-day epic Scottish city trip, can't we? Have to get a day sorted for that one, yeah.
So I can't think as far ahead as the weekend yet, so I don't know what I'm doing. I have a fairly light weekend this weekend, so I can probably go have a few more beers next weekend. I've nearly got through my.
We should in theory be able to do. We should in theory be able to do Aberdeen, Inverness, Dundee, Broughty Ferry, probably Kirkcaldy, Edinburgh, Berwick, Dunbar, Newcastle.
Bruce will have a drink in about 3 of those, and then
plus those Scots rail cards. It's for 50 plus now, isn't it, Bruce? 50-year-old.
Yeah, don't worry what it costs you. Well, I'll be able to sort that out. I'll be able to. You can be my guests. Yeah.
Right, well, happy drinking. Have a good day tomorrow. Send us some photos, and
wherever we end up. Yeah.
Obviously, we've got the summer holidays coming up, so I don't know when we'll schedule another one. We'll try and do it perhaps before we all go away, or when certainly Bruce and I go away. But we'll see.
I won't be going away.
Keep your eye on the social media, and we'll work it through.